On the previous video, I asked a trick question with regards to Parshat Massey. Here is another interesting quick question. Where is the Tehumim Shabbat possibly hinted in this weekly reading? Tehumim Shabbat means how far you could walk outside the city. On Shabbat, there are a lot of laws that have to do with not doing something, but it's not clear if it's biblically forbidden to walk outside of a certain domain, to walk too far from the city, if that's a biblical prohibition or rabbinical. This is what's called Tehumim. It's not a work, you're not actually doing something, you're just walking. But the question is, does the Torah forbid you to walk too far on Shabbat? You're definitely allowed to walk within a city as far as you want, as long as it's considered one city according to Jewish law. This is not, by the way, always obvious. A lot of times, something that the particular government or the particular people of that land may call one city for various reasons, that might not be considered one city in Jewish law, and vice versa. Something that could be considered two different cities, maybe in Jewish law one city. By us, of course, it's not the government or the political powers that decide where the boundaries are. It has to do with these houses being close enough to each other. And sometimes the way the buildings are built in large cities today, two different parts of the city might be considered separate cities. I mean, one example is I live in New York. We have 5 boroughs here. And since the time the Orthodox Jews started coming to New York already for over 100 years, there were these discussions, how far can you walk? For instance, can you walk over from Brooklyn to Manhattan to visit somebody in a hospital? A lot of people living in Williamsburg, for instance, are not far from Manhattan. It's walkable distance. In an hour or two, they could walk over to a Manhattan hospital. But the question is, are you permitted on Shabbat to walk that far? Is Manhattan and Brooklyn considered one Tehum? It's not a simple question at all. I'm not going to go into this right now. But whatever the case may be, whether it's rabbinical law, whether it's biblical law, there is such a law. You're not allowed to walk too far from a city, approximately a distance of a kilometer, about 2/3 of a mile from a city. You're not allowed to walk. And if a person lives by himself in a forest, for instance, in his own hut, then from that place on, that's his city, so he could only walk from that hut a distance of about a kilometer in different directions. But the question is, where is it hinted? So some say it's hinted actually in our Parsha. There were Tanaim already that understood that our weekly reading hints to the idea of Tehumim. And that is, it talks about these Levitical cities. And the way they were built is there was an area near them that was given to the Levites. The Levites didn't have regular land, the farmland of Israel. They had cities. Altogether, they were given 48 cities in the end. So each of their cities had to have a kind of area surrounding it. And the Torah tells us in 2 consecutive verses, practically, contradictory distances, how much around the city is given. 1000 amah or alpayim be'amah. 1000 amot or 2000 amot. Amah is a distance between, an average distance between an elbow and the middle finger. So it's a certain distance that used to be measured by. It's about half a meter. It's more than a foot and usually less than 2 feet. So in old times, in many different countries, people were measuring things by amah, by the elbow distance. Just like, for instance, in America, we still measure feet, right? We measure by a distance of a foot, not anybody's foot, but a specific foot that was already decided to be used for hundreds of years. But similarly, there was a certain distance called amah. And 1000 amot around the city is some kind of an area that's given to the Levites, but also it says 2000 amot around the city. So that's about a kilometer. If each amah is about half a meter, then 2000 amot is about a kilometer, about 2/3 of a mile. So there are different opinions which part around the city had what status, but among other things, one of the sages learns from here that in fact that's the distance that you could walk outside the city on Shabbat, meaning anything that's related to the city up to 2000 amot, up to about a kilometer, is still part of the city in a certain sense. But further than that, you shouldn't be able to go. Just like the Torah says, in the very beginning, when the Shabbat is introduced, even before the giving of the Torah, before the Mount Sinai, the Shabbat is introduced in Parshat B'Shalach. And when man is falling every day, and the Torah says that on Shabbat man is not going to fall, you're not supposed to pick up man on Shabbat. And it says the person should not walk out of his place. So those who interpret this word literally, that you cannot go out of a certain distance from your place. So how much is that distance? According to one of the sages, Rabbi Akiva, the hint is in our Parsha, 2,000 amot, based on the distance that's still considered part of the city, Tehumim of the city. Now, we do not follow that opinion, by the way. The halacha is that if Tehumim are biblical at all, they are much larger than that, about 12 kilometers. But there are opinions that all the laws of Tehumim are always rabbinical. There is no Tehumim min Torah at all. And on this I'm going to end. If you like this video, please press like.